Hi, friends. Welcome back to Universal Talks. I am so excited to welcome another BroStar, Amar. I almost said Andrew Martin.
It's okay.
Amar is an intuitive healer, energy worker, channeler, and tarot reader who empowers people to create meaningful changes in their lives. Through offerings like his energy healing sessions, a Mastery Mentorship program, and his deep tarot readings, he provides practical tools and transformative guidance for those ready to step into their fullest potential. I can't wait to hear their story about this book that I am a proud owner of.
Oh, awesome. So
Yes.
exciting. Thank
And
you.
just hear about your journey and your spiritual awakening and just hear about anything about you.
Well,
You
I'm ready
regularly,
to
you
go.
also have a YouTube channel, which I have been a fan of for years, and you explore topics like Ascension and the New Earth timeline, which I think we're going to touch upon on this episode. And just thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be here. And, we were talking about this before the recording. You and I have engaged over the years online and through my social media and through my channel. So it's really exciting to connect with you one-on-one and
Yeah.
like put a face and an energy to the name.
Yeah. I was thinking, like, because I never know, like, when I fully connect or this physical connect, I should say, with someone, because I always feel like it's a soul connection. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, there you are. But I
Right.
think it was, I saw you in a video with Candace Craw Goldman. You guys did like a workshop together.
hmm
And you did like a sound healing
Yeah, it was back
or
in
toning. It was
I
a
don't know.
while
It was
ago.
like 20, was it 2016 or
It
2017, I
it
think?
was
Is
a
it really that
while
long
ago. Yeah, because I
again?
think I got certified in 2017. So that's when I was like exploring Candace more and all of her videos, and
Right.
I think that's where I found you. I'm like, where?
Yeah, and she had reached out to me just through my YouTube channel, which is how most
Mm,
people find me.
yeah,
Um, and she had just, invited me to be a part of this conference in Sarasota, in Florida.
that's what it
And that
was.
was,
Yep.
God, that was like almost 10 years ago. That's crazy to
I
me that it was so
know.
long ago. Because I think I was living in Seattle at the time when she approached me. And, ever since then, she and I have stayed connected,
Yeah,
sometimes more, sometimes less. But yeah, it
yeah.
was probably through that period of my life.
Good. I
That's
thought
crazy.
so. Yeah. Because again, my linear brain's always like,
Yeah, same here. And I think all of the chapters that I've lived in this life, and I've done so many things and lived in so many places that I never forget a face. But I'm like, how
yes,
it's the context sometimes of how I know someone,
same.
or the reference of how, do we know each other one-on-one? Were you connected? So yeah, it
Right.
just becomes this beautiful jumble of connections,
It
and
is.
sometimes I'm clear and sometimes I'm not
For
on how I know
sure.
somebody.
I love it. I love it. So where are you located now?
I'm actually currently in Wyoming,
Oh,
back
okay.
in the town that I grew up in as a kid.
Oh,
My father's
wow.
been having some health problems, and so I moved back. What we're recording this in December, so it was July, just 5, 6 months ago,
Hmm.
that I moved back here to stay with him and to help him and just kind of figure out what his next chapter looks like and what his next steps are. And
Yeah.
it's not lost on me at all that some of the biggest healing in my life is happening while I'm back in the town that I grew up in that I
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
swore I would never return to.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
one of those things where spirit's like, oh, that's nice that you think that, but what's actually
Exactly.
going to
Yeah.
happen? Yeah.
Yeah. I have that currently with my son who is 14 now. It's just like every stage and every moment, it's just like, ooh, meeting my inner child at that stage is just, it's a great opportunity. It is.
It really is. And my father and I weren't super close when I was a kid.
Hmm.
And we have had I would say a close relationship, or at least a very friendly and open relationship, as an adult.
Hmm.
But moving here to be with him, I realized like I have never spent this much time with him one-on-one in my life without my
Wow.
mom or my sister or someone else kind of in the
Yeah.
middle of the sort of. So it has been really intense in so many ways, but also really beautiful and illuminating because I've had an opportunity to see so much of myself in him and vice versa. So it's been
Mm.
really, really incredible in many ways.
Good. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
I
beautiful.
mean,
So
it's also
what,
been really frustrating and really
I
hard.
mean, yes, there has to be a balance. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was your upbringing like then?
I grew up here in Wyoming, in
Yeah.
this town, and I had a good family life. My parents are both musicians and teachers, very creative individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So they always afforded my sister and I a lot of creativity. I took piano lessons and voice lessons and was in band and choir and theater and art lessons. So it was very expressive. And, I think for a kid who grew up in the 70s and 80s in the small town of Wyoming,
Mm-hmm.
I think my life was pretty free.
Mm.
The other side of that was, growing up in a small town, being the being that I am, it was not easy. I was
Yeah.
misunderstood, I was rejected, I was, bullied pretty heavily. But, I look back on it now through a much different lens than I think I experienced it through. Like everything,
Yeah.
hindsight always provides some context that has allowed me to see things in a different light. But I had a really strong group of friends, many of whom I'm still connected to
Good.
in one way or another. And it was, I think more than anything, my experience as a kid was just always not understanding why I made people so uncomfortable and what it was about me that was just so inherently triggering. I mean,
Yeah.
all I had to do was walk into a room and people got uncomfortable. And
Mm.
I see that now that that's part of what I came here to do, not specifically make people uncomfortable, but to challenge people, and
Right.
especially energetically. I think challenge them on a level that isn't necessarily conscious or something that
Hmm.
they're even aware of. It's just this sense of like, my energy field is pretty intense,
Yeah.
and I came
And
here.
it's a reflection of them too, which can make someone very uncomfortable if they're
Yeah.
not comfortable with themselves. So yeah.
Yes, especially in a town like Wyoming, which is very, we could say toxic masculinity, but very
Hmm.
heavy on that very old school model of this is a man, this is a woman, this is their role, this is what they do. And as
Yeah.
someone who's always kind of walked in the fringe or kind of in between worlds, people just didn't know what to do with me. And I think given my ability to see through the physical, which I assumed that everyone saw things the way that I did until I was about 5 or 6. And I was like, oh no, actually. And this is something I need to hide. So I think it was kind of the classic story of
Yeah.
the outcast and sort of the way shower that things aren't necessarily easy in the beginning because you don't fit in because you didn't come here to fit in.
Exactly.
And as a kid, I didn't understand that and it was really painful. But now as a grown adult, well, I can say grown, I don't know if I'm grown, but I can look back on that and say, thank God. Thank
Yeah.
God, because it provided me, I think, a perspective that was very unique. And I was never really a part of that consensus reality. I was never in the center of sort of the accepted narrative. So when
Hmm.
time came, when spirit started knocking on the door, and when I finally had my big awakening surrender in 2012, it wasn't easy, but I think it was a lot easier because I didn't have a lot to lose. I was already a fringe dweller. I was already kind of on the outside looking in. So I was like, well, I'm already halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were aware of your gifts and abilities at a young age. Like what were they?
You know, I shared this the other day in a newsletter. Like my sense was always this voice and this knowing within me that was just like, keep going, keep going. This isn't the end. There's more than this for you. There's a lot more coming for you. There's a lot more things. There's things that are way more important that are, much more um meaningful than where you are now. And so it was, first and foremost, it was, I think, just an ability, even in the midst of some really deep suffering and pain, to see it in a larger context and know that, like, okay, someday this is going to make sense.
Yeah.
That was just a sense that I had of my guides always being with me. And really, the way that they influenced me in the beginning was they were always saying, like, look beneath the surface. Don't necessarily hear the words that are being
Hmm.
said, but what do you feel and what do you see with that deeper sight? And
Mm.
I always knew when someone wasn't telling the truth. And I often knew also what it was they were trying to cover up,
Yep.
what it was they were lying about and why. I've always been able to see beneath the pathology of human behavior and have an understanding of like, oh, this is the pain that you're trying to eradicate or escape or erase, and this is why you're behaving that way. And I
Hmm.
just spoke very clearly about that. Most adults are not interested in the truth of who they really are inside that they're trying so desperately to hide.
Oh.
And so I just always felt, and then I would just always see things geometrically. Like I could see in
Mm.
somebody's field where, it always showed up like a bruise in their field. That's the best way I can
Mm.
describe it. Like I would see it as a balanced geometry, and then I would see these sort of dark spots or these kind of indentations in somebody's field that would guide me just sort of intuitively to what it was they were trying to outrun or deny or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was just always a sense of kind of what's hidden behind the facade and the energies and the truth that was hidden or buried. And that was a really, really beautiful thing in many ways, but it also got me into a lot of trouble
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
because, in like 10 words or less, I could completely sum up somebody's pain or their trauma, and nobody wants that. At
Yeah.
least not for, a 7-year-old
I was
getting
gonna
the
say it's
eight.
hard to explain it from a little kid. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I resonate with that
So
for sure.
that's how I think. And then, there was just always this sense of no matter what, I've always been in the right place at the right time. It's
Mm,
always been this serendipitous thing of like spirit just knowing where to drop me and me just kind of, I think mostly not really knowing. So it wasn't until much later that I really tried to resist the guidance. I just went with it because to me it was just real life. It was just how
yeah,
life was, and I didn't question it really.
right. Did you have someone to talk to or confide in during all of
Well,
this?
I mean, there were friends and human guides along the way. More than
Hmm.
anything, they just showed up in the form of people that I could be instantly close to, many of whom I still have a bond with to this day. Some, are really close into my life daily. Some we see each other maybe once a year or every, whenever. But
Yeah.
wasn't until my early 20s, well, I would say actually my mid to late 20s, that I started to receive actual guidance from mentors and from people who kind of knew what was up. But up until that point, it was just I was blessed to have a crew of really, really beautiful souls who are also quite sensitive and also very creative and empathic and also very intuitive. Whether or not they were aware of it, I don't know. But
Hmm.
I would say really when my awakening really began in my mid 20s, that was when the mentors and the guides and the helpers started showing up more deliberately. But up
Yeah.
until that point, it was just like always, finding another misfit to connect with and to find somebody that I could be myself with and feel safe with.
Right. And how about your family, your
My
parents and
family
sisters?
was always super supportive. As a queer kid, I started coming out to my family when I was like 18 or 19.
Mm,
Um, and they've always been really supportive. My sister and I are close. My family now, although they don't always understand what I'm saying or they don't really get a lot of the times what I do, they're totally supportive. I was
yeah.
blessed to have a family that was supportive of me pretty much no matter what I did.
Nice.
I mean, I caused them a lot of grief and a lot of heartache, I think, but,
Hey.
uh, I think like most kids who are born with a very clear sense of who they are and a very strong will, I think that's to be expected.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, my family and I are close. I'm supported by them, if not always understood, and I feel pretty lucky.
Good, good. So there's no like religious hindrances or they weren't spiritual growing up. It was all
No,
you.
I mean, we were a part of the church just because my parents were musicians. And so my mom directed the choir, and,
Hmm.
my sister and I would sing or, be a part of some musical presentation because
Yeah.
she's also a musician. And my dad would, be a part of whatever things from time to time. So we were active in the church, but I wasn't raised in any sort of restrictive fundamentalist thing.
Yeah.
Interestingly, though, even though I would say my religious influence was pretty tame and not really super strong, even when I started really awakening and coming into my gifts again, there was a lot of religious programming that I had to unravel and a lot of
Mm,
fear that had come through the church. That I
yeah.
wasn't even really aware was there,
Yeah.
interestingly. But no, I wasn't raised with a super intense dogma or set of rules that I had to break.
Right.
Thank God.
Good. Yeah, yeah. For real. I always like to ask that
Yeah.
question. It's a little taboo, but I'm just always so
No, I think
curious.
it's a huge part of a lot of it. And,
Yeah.
even in my work with my clients and my one-on-one stuff, there's so much that we just collectively soak up.
Yep.
Yes, I've worked with people who were raised in super hardcore, intense, religious, restrictive, fire and brimstone kind of realities. Some who were
Yeah.
raised in very sort of hippie commune, super free, super, progressive, whatever. And
Right.
then most of the people in between. So it's interesting to me to see, yes, of course, what we're raised in will have an influence, but even the stuff that's just collectively kind of in the air, I
Yeah.
don't think we really often realize how influential that can be.
No, we don't. I just had a guest on the other day, Lorian Talianu, and he calls it quantum somatic work, but he works with newborns and pregnant women and begins the healing journey in the utero because just the mother stress or just the stress of the birth and just all of that, like, is just lingers on until
Yeah.
it's healed. It could be lifetimes. So, yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
It can be powerful. And, I say that my family and I are close, but there was absolutely chapters with my mom, with my sister, and now kind of currently in real time with my dad, where I found myself having to like consciously reject a lot of what they projected onto me as a kid.
Mm,
And it's just the realization that I don't believe the same things that my family does. I don't
yeah,
navigate, I'm a bit of a black sheep even in my family where I'm accepted.
yeah,
I don't navigate the world according to the same set of beliefs that they do. I am not a part of the consensus reality that they are often a part of. And for a long time, that created a lot of conflict. But just coming to a space of like learning how to offer unconditional love and be present with someone who loves me, but I may not necessarily agree with 80% of their belief system or how
yeah,
they navigate the world, but they're good people with good hearts and they mean
yeah,
well. So,
yeah,
luckily I wasn't raised in an environment that was toxic or abusive or anything like that.
mm,
But there was still conflict to overcome for sure.
yeah, yeah. So, 2012, your awakening. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, the conscious awakening of coming back into my gifts started happening probably 1995 or 96. And over the next few years, I would have these really intense, kind of mind-blowing experiences that would freeze me in my tracks and would really rattle my cage. And I often found a way to explain them away because I wasn't ready.
Mm, yeah,
And over the years leading up to 2012, they became more frequent. They became more intense. There were even periods where I was working with people in a mentorship capacity or was beginning to really actively explore my gifts and what it meant. I jokingly say, up until that point, my spiritual understanding was Oprah and Chopra. Like, I think, like most people, it was, remembering your
yes,
spirit and the seven spiritual laws of success.
yeah,
And I'm denigrating that. There's value there,
yeah,
but
for
it doesn't
sure.
go deep. That's kind of the kiddie pool from my
Hmm.
perspective. And over the years, it just became more and more intense. And then in 2005, I was living in New York, and there was a moment that just completely shattered my world. And I gave in and said, okay, fine. And then fast forward a few years later, and I wasn't ready. And I started running again, and I started looking for a distraction. And I wanted to go back to an old way of life when things made sense. And even though I wasn't happy, at least I understood it.
Yeah,
And then in 2012, I was living in LA and I was in the exact same place I had been in 2005, where I was just miserable. I was waking up like, oh my God, this life again. I was going to bed like, please God, I just don't want to wake up.
mm,
And finally, in 2012, I had an experience that broke through and really broke me open. Um, and I said, okay, fine. Like whatever you want from me, whatever you need from me. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want, but if you get me back to Seattle, get me a job, get me an apartment, whatever you want from me, as long as I'm happy, self-employed and helping people, I'll do it. And I
but
did.
at this point, like, were you pleading the God source? What was your,
I just didn't know. So in 2005, I'll just briefly share. In 2005, I had lost my apartment. I was living with some friends, sleeping on a mattress on their living room floor, and life was just crashing down upon me. And I was at this moment where I was just particularly desperate. And I just said out loud one morning, my roommates had gone. I was home by myself because I didn't have a job. I wasn't doing anything but like leeching off of other people.
yeah,
And I just said, I don't know what to do. I need help.
mm,
And then immediately I heard this voice say, you realize it doesn't have to be this hard. You can go back to Seattle if you want to. And it wasn't just a thought, it was a voice in the
yeah,
room. And I was like, what the hell was that? Like, are my roommates home looking outside? Is someone on the street? Did someone leave the TV on? No, it was really me from that higher perspective speaking to myself. I know now it was my higher self.
mm,
And so 2 weeks later, I was back in Seattle, staying with a friend, like literally almost overnight, seemingly impossible. I had no way of knowing how it was going to work out. It just magically worked out and I was fine. 2012, fast forward in the same exact place, miserable, unhappy. Like I had on paper, my life, and I talk about this in the book, in the opening chapter of the book.
yeah,
On paper, my life looked great. I had a life that many people would have given anything for,
yeah,
but I was miserable. And so I decided to paint my apartment because what do you do when you're a queer person? But you decorate when you're unhappy.
yep,
So
rearrange, yep,
I'm a bit of a cliche. And
yep,
so I was painting the bathroom and I was just about ready to paint the final wall. And as soon as I touched the roller to the wall, the same voice said, you do realize as soon as you finish painting this bathroom, it's going to be time to leave, don't you?
Mm.
And that was it. Like I get goosebumps even talking about it
Wow.
again because it was the exact same voice, the exact same moment, the exact same, experience emotionally that I was in. And that was it. I lost it. I just broke down, cried intensely for I don't know how long. It was at least an hour. And I finally said, okay, I give. And what I'm aware of now, looking back, is that that was kind of my last opportunity to commit or not. I saw very
Mm.
clearly in that moment that I had a choice. I could continue down the path of trying to control, of trying to stay in the familiar, trying to stay in the acceptable known reality, trying with every fiber of my being to make my life be something that it wasn't. And
Yeah.
I would have been dead a year later, I have no doubt. Or at least living a life where I might as well have been dead because I would have been
Wow.
so miserable and broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I could have said yes and just given in, and I did. And that changed everything. And that's when I said, okay, as long as you get me back to Seattle, get me a job in an apartment, I'll do whatever you want. As long as I'm happy, self-employed, and helping people.
Yeah.
Literally, like 2, 3 weeks later, that's exactly where I was. And then things just started really accelerating in 2013, and it just took off from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's pretty common with many healers that 2012 was a very pivotal
Yeah.
year for us, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there was so much, conversation around 2012 and what does it mean in the end of the world and apocalypse and blah blah blah, and apocalypse just means revelation, right? It just
Yes.
means like the truth begins to come to the surface
Yeah.
and the end of the cycle. And we were literally in these endings, the end of the Kali Yuga and moving out of Pluto and Capricorn, getting ready to move into Pluto and Aquarius. And
Mhm.
I think that one of the things that we as humans often do is we take these spiritual messages that are often metaphorical or very abstract or symbolic, and we take them literally.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And,
Like
we
the
interpret
Bible.
things in yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We
Yeah.
read the Bible as word for word, like this is, no, it's not what Jesus really said. It's an
Yeah.
interpretation of a symbol.
Right,
Um,
right.
and so I think that in 2012, there was a big awakening. There was a huge wake up call. And I see now that the work I do is very important. It's very meaningful. And I'm humbled to be able to do it. But at the time, I was so focused on the fear of the unknown and what am I going to have to give up and what does this mean, that I just couldn't see beyond my own short-sighted fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I finally, got my head out of my ass.
Right. So like what was that evolution into becoming a full-time healer, making it a
It's
business?
interesting because I just kind of started. I went through what I call like a spiritual boot camp. I worked at an office job when I moved back to Seattle from like 2012 to like mid 2013. I worked in an office job, and I honestly, the first like 6 months I was there, I was kind of settling back into this complacent life of like, oh, maybe I'm not going to do anything different than what I do. I
Yeah.
just started to kind of not go to sleep again, but just again started to kind of explain it away.
Mm.
And then Spirit really came knocking on the door and was like, wait, no, you remember why you're here. And then I started this spiritual boot camp. So it was literally like, I mean, it was so intense and so amazing and so unbelievable to me, the experiences that I was having in meditation and just, learning how to channel. And so much of it was spontaneous, and felt spontaneous. Now I know, of course, there's always a method to the madness, so to speak. But so
Mhm.
those first like couple of years, I was just kind of learning on the job. I started
Okay.
doing readings at a local bookstore. Before that, I had started, there used to be this website called Aranum. It may still be active, but it was basically online psychic readers.
Okay.
And I hated that because I felt so uncomfortable and so uncertain of like, what am I going to say and how am I going to know what to say? But every time I showed up, the information was just there and people were always blown away by what I was sharing. And then I kind of graduated to working at a bookstore, East West Books in Seattle, doing readings there. And that's where I started doing my first workshops and classes. And so it just kind of took off. And
Yeah.
YouTube really in the beginning, and if you go back and watch my YouTube channel, like you see me from the beginning, like my first video is still there up until the ones I just posted yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And you see in real life, like this evolution of my practice, of my perspective, of my journey. And I have come and gone from YouTube over the years, but that's always been the primary way that people connect with me.
Yeah.
And I just kind of learned on the job. And then 2017 was kind of a pinnacle of that first chapter. those first like 4 or 5 years of my practice. And then it started to fall apart again. And I would say up until just a few months ago, I was in this place of like, am I supposed to be doing this? Like, I don't know what the heck
Yeah.
I'm doing anymore. And, and we can talk about this about the New Earth Ascension stuff in a bit, but that was
Yeah.
really, I was being called to move on in my own content. I was being called once again, and this is what I know. It is an endless journey. I am never going to stop expanding and learning and growing. As long as I wake up in a body that gives me the experience of being separate from source, I still have work to do.
Yeah.
And it was a really, really intense time from 2017 up until, recently, this past 7 years. It's been another round of letting go and of collapse and of releasing and surrendering over and over. I can't tell you how many times in the past like 5 years I've said, I thought I knew what surrender was, right? I
Seriously.
thought I knew what,
Yeah.
healing was. And it's always been this very parallel thing of my experience is something that always informs my work. And I had a lot of learning to do.
Yes.
So my ego was thinking like, oh, I've totally cracked the code. Back then I was going by my birth name, Andrew, and I was like, oh, Andrew Martin Energy, that's the T, that's the whole thing. Like this is just going to be me for the rest of my life. No. Changed the name, let go of that identity, went into another. So it was just this realization of like, oh man, I have not even started. I've only just begun. I mean, honestly, I feel like I just graduated recently. And in hindsight, I can see that. But, in the moment when things are going well, it's this sense of like, oh man, I've got this. Like, it's all good now. I'm totally going to have the dream life. And Spirit, as always, was like, that's nice. But
Right. That's a good motivation. Yeah. Let's keep
yeah,
that.
that's a
Well,
good
that's that
idea.
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have ideas and dreams, but that's not how it's going to go.
Nope.
So,
Nope.
more than anything, I think for me, it's just been learning how to let go of my own will, learning that
Mhm.
my perspective is there is no free will. I think we get the experience of having free will because Earth School, we come here to remember who we are. And what's the best way to remember who you are than to choose everything that you are not? So
Yes.
we are given the opportunity to choose against ourselves because then we learn through the understanding of like, oh, this isn't it. This isn't it. It's just trial and error.
Mhm.
And once we transcend the physical form and move into the higher frequencies and higher dimensions, we realize that, oh, I am the divine. So why would I ever choose against myself? I don't need free will because the only will there is the divine will. And
Yes.
so realizing that, and I still forget that to this day of like, no, I want it like this. I want it in this color. I want it at this moment. I want it at this time.
Yeah.
And Spirit says, okay, go for it. You're not
Right.
going to get it. It's not how it's going to happen. And you know that because for
Yeah.
me, that sense of entitlement is always evidence that I'm choosing against myself.
Mm.
Because when it's true, it's effortless, it's surrendered,
Yeah.
it's a humble experience of just coming to it as
Yeah.
opposed to walking into the room and demanding it like a toddler.
Right.
So, I think a lot of what I had to remember and really the bulk of what I've learned over the past 12 years is it's about the will of the divine. That's it. And I am a vessel to be used by spirit. I'm the instrument, spirit is the breath. So
Mm.
these days my prayer is okay, just use me. What do
Yeah.
you need me to say? What do you want me to be express? What am I here to be as an avatar of you? That's the only
Yeah.
reason any of us are here.
Every moment, moment to moment. Yeah, I agree. Speaking of being a vessel,
Dun, 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 dun.
can you tell us how the messages came through and what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, so interestingly, over the course of starting in 2012, my group, my guides, my team, my brothers, the lighted ones, they were the first group of beings that I started consciously channeling and consciously connecting with. And they, for the first, I would say maybe 5 or 6 years, I was constantly sharing channeled messages from them on my old blog. And this was last year. Um, I started to think that, oh, I'm going to write a book. And I had always known I was going to write many books, but I didn't really know like what's the first one. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just transcribe. And actually, it had come through a friend who said, I've been following you for years. I remember when you had the blog. I remember when you shared the channeled messages. Why don't you just take those and publish them in a book? And I thought, actually, that's a really good idea. And I started going through my archive and rereading a lot of the channeled messages because
Yeah.
when I'm channeling, I don't recall a lot of it.
Okay.
And so I was rereading them. I was like, wow, this is actually really good stuff. So I thought, well, let me just put that in a book. So I started to go through all the messages, like 5 years of blog posts, and start to kind of edit them and take which ones seemed to be the most powerful.
Hmm.
And then interestingly, around 20, I would say maybe it was 2014 or 2015, I started to get a different flavor of a message.
Hmm.
And I, at the time, wasn't really aware of what the difference was. It just was a different flavor. And I had been connecting with my higher self at that point. Interestingly, I didn't connect with my higher self first. It was my guides that kind of led me to that connection. And I realized and I had a Facebook page at the time back in 2015, and I used to just share these little short blurbs of a message that were
Hmm.
usually, just like a paragraph, and I would just post them online and do a little visual meme to represent the message or with the text of the main message on it. And I would also be posting those at the same time. And as I was going through my archive, I was like, wait a minute, there's like two different voices here.
Hmm.
And bingo, that was when the message dropped in. Yes, these are the messages that were from the higher self. These are the ones that you should publish first. The other content might be useful some at some point and someday, but this is the focus. So I completely set aside the channeled messages for content for the book, started extracting the messages from the higher self,
Hmm.
and literally within like a week and a half, I had the book ready to go. And in less than a month, I had it all put together and published. Like it happened. I mean, and granted, I had the
Wow.
content already. So I
Right.
wasn't writing it. I was just organizing it and editing
Yeah.
some of the grammar, and had a friend who helped me edit and then wrote the opening chapter and kind of
Wow.
figured everything out. And, thank you to my friend Kim for being the editor. My friend Jonathan, who did the cover photo design, and it just kind of happened. Like it was one of those things that I'm a manifesting generator if people are into human design.
Yeah.
So I'm always that way. Like it's just boom, I just know, and then bam, it's done literally almost overnight.
Hmm.
And so notes from the higher self just became a realization of, oh my God, my higher self has been guiding me the whole time. And if I started to look at where I was in my life, yes, the messages helped a lot of people, but they were really just me helping myself
Oh yeah.
and guiding myself through the
Yeah.
forest of awakening.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed like something to share. And then as I put it together, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of an oracle. Like you could read this book front to back if you wanted to, but it's really useful. And I have my own copy here somewhere. It's really useful just as something to kind of flip it
I was
open
just gonna
and
say,
see
like,
what,
a friend came over yesterday or the day before, and I had it out, and she just flipped open to one. Because if you can see how it's laid out, he has like notes for each one.
yeah.
So they're
So
short
each
and sweet.
post-it.
She was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, so she might be getting one for Christmas. But
Awesome.
just yeah,
So
just one of
it
those things that
was,
you can just open to, and just whatever message comes through that moment is for
yeah.
you, like an Oracle deck. It's cool.
Yeah, and even, ask a question. Like you could even use it and say, okay, I don't know what to do about my situation. Help me, guide me, whatever, and then just flip it open. So I think there's 80 something notes in there, if I remember correctly, and
86, I think. Yeah.
86.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily broken up into chapters. It's just
Right.
note 1 through 86. And
Yeah.
there's a progression. One of the things that I'm also aware of is when I'm channeling, it's almost musical. There's a structure to it. There's a peak and a
Mhm.
valley and a flow and almost a chorus. And there, oftentimes in the beginning, I was like, why do I repeat myself over and over? Sometimes I'll say the same thing in 100 different ways. And the message always is, well, some people just need to hear it 100 different ways before they finally get it.
Yeah.
And it's the flow of the energy. The words are the words, but it's the energy behind them that really is doing a lot of the work in kind of rattling someone awake or breaking something loose that they can then understand. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, the book's available on Amazon, and I'm super proud of it. But it was also one of those things where I was like, oh my God, it was literally right in front of my face the whole
Right.
time.
Yeah.
I just didn't even realize it.
I have one in the works too, because I have what I call, well, they were Kennyisms, but now maybe they'll be Kennethisms, but like just like a little coffee book of pretty much just like this, just little short notes of little
Yeah,
bumper sticker quotes. And
yeah,
yeah, I love that.
totally.
Is there, I know you say you don't have a copy by you, but is there one that like sticks out in your mind?
The one that I keep coming back to, and it's one that I still am challenged by,
Mm.
is everything is for you and everything is from you. Nothing is your adversary.
Ooh.
And I think that one, especially where we are just as humans on the planet in the midst of watching the revelation of all of the truth and the corruption and the craziness and the confusion
Yes.
about where our path is heading. And, we still, in so many ways, believe that we are victims of something. And I
Yeah.
understand as a queer person what it is to be victimized. And I
Yeah.
also understand that no matter what happens, there's always an opportunity there. And my work has always pointed people back to themselves. For me, in my perspective, the mark of someone who is a healer or a guide in their integrity is someone who's always going to point you back to yourself.
Mm.
It's not about what I want. Of course, I want every human to realize their truth and come back to their power and reclaim their sovereignty and live happily ever after. I want that more than
Right.
anything for everybody.
For sure.
And I can't have an investment in how my clients' lives work out. Otherwise, then it's a personal thing, and it can't be personal if I am going to be clear as a channel.
Yeah.
So nothing is your adversary, everything is for you, and everything is from you is, I think, the ultimate lesson and the ultimate realization that I had a hand in creating all of it. Everything that I experienced, no matter how bright and beautiful or how dark and painful,
Yep.
I had a hand in participating in it in some way.
Hmm.
And I think that that is humanity. That is our greatest challenge right now is pointing the finger doesn't work.
No.
Yes, we need to hold people accountable. No, we don't excuse bad behavior.
Yeah.
And if you're showing up screaming at something, you are participating in that thing. I
100%.
am not minimizing the importance of advocacy and rising up and, protesting things,
Right.
but also understand that if you're showing up and screaming at it, you are connected to it in some way. That's the way
Yeah.
this reality works.
And you're feeding it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just
It's
feeding it.
resistance. The way you make something bigger is by pushing it away from you, right?
Right.
Go to the gym and tell me that's not true. You
Right.
want a bigger chest, you lift heavier weight. So,
Right.
whatever it is that you are finding yourself in an adversarial relationship with, it is teaching you something. It's an opportunity. And yes, it's important for people to have their voice and to use it. But we need to really realize that nothing is happening to us.
Mm.
We are all participating collectively in
Yeah.
some, and
Yeah.
it is impossible for you to perceive something that is not a part of you in some way already.
Hmm.
So that one for me is the biggest challenge. And whether that's in a day-to-day micro level of my own life and navigating my interpersonal relationships or looking out on the macro level of what's happening on the world stage politically or, geographically or sociopolitically, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's a really, really challenging one to understand and to accept.
It can be. It's making me think of one of the four agreements of don't take anything personally. That's one that I consistently am repeating in my head, especially when I'm out in public.
Yeah, because it's not. And
Yeah.
I think, to your point, I was having a conversation with a friend about that recently. He said, it's so much easier when I come to the realization that my pain is not personal.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
the pain that is an inherent part of life is not personal.
Right.
Nothing is out to get us. We do not live in a punitive reality. It is all an opportunity. It's a choice. It's a chance.
Yeah.
And to get to that point where, okay, it's not personal.
Right.
Bashar talks about how you're the only one in the room. Every other version of every other person that plays a role in your life as a partner or a family member or a coworker or just a stranger on the street, they're all you. They're
Mm.
all a version of you that you have projected outward, and they are showing up as they show up in service of you. And you are choosing how they show up through your perception and your belief and your projection about them. And yes, they are also an objective being, but you are not yourself when you are with them. You are a version of them that they are
Yes.
projecting upon. So
Yep.
you're the only thinker in the room. My guides always say that every particle is the center of the universe. And
Yeah.
we have what, 30 trillion cells? So we have 30 trillion particles that are the center of our individual experience. So you are the center of your life. You are the core. You are the activator, the creator, the responder, the rejector, the acceptor. You are all of it. And
Mm.
the only way anything outside of us can ever change is through an internal shift first. This is the primary reality. This is the secondary reality. And that's just how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Another, or not another, but a analogy that I give sometimes to my clients or just friends when I try to explain like perception is like if you go to the movies. you can have an audience full of people, and they all have a completely different takeaway from that
Yeah.
film. So that's on the micro level of life, but that's just something
Yeah.
that helps people be like, oh yeah, that's true. Like it's
Yeah.
just
Totally.
yeah, it's on the eyes for sure.
Yeah. And I like the idea of the roller coaster. You can have 10 people on the same ride, the same day, the same place, the same time. And all of them, some of them are going to be terrified and hate it. Some of them are
Right.
going to love it and laugh their ass
Right.
off. Some people are going to pass out because it's too much and they
Right.
won't remember any of it, but it's all the same ride.
Yeah, and they
All
all
go back
chose to be
together.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're all having your own experience based upon what's happening internally, your beliefs, your past, your trauma,
Your
resolved or
fear,
not,
yeah,
your
yeah.
fears, your phobias, all of that is going to create your reality.
Mm,
Like Bashar's perspective, he says only 5% of your reality is objective. The rest is you
yeah,
created through your interpretations.
yeah, yeah. Speaking of, that was a good segue. I was going to ask you about you do 2025 annual tarot readings.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, I do them once a year. I mean, I offer tarot readings, and it's interesting because a lot of people say, like, how do you reconcile the New Earth Ascension stuff with something like tarot, which for many people seems to be kind of separate. And I
Yeah.
say, well, I just love doing the tarot. I just think it's fun. I
Oh
started with
yeah.
Oracle cards way back in the day. Actually, I got my first deck of tarot cards when I was like 14. I had no idea what they meant. I didn't understand them. So I think I just ended up throwing them away. But I just think it's fun. I love using the cards. It kind of connects me to a time in my life that was much simpler in many ways. So I
Hmm.
just love to do them. And so once a year for December through like the first couple weeks of January, I do annual forecasts where we look at each month, draw a card for each month, draw a card for the energy of them, the energy of their environment, and a couple of other things. And we just kind of look at what's on the horizon for them for the upcoming year.
Fun. So you said
Yeah.
you had like your first deck at 14, but you tossed it. So like how did tarot become part of your healing and offerings?
I don't know. I still don't know where I ever found that deck of cards. I have no idea where they came from. I have no idea where they went. I didn't understand it at the time, and frankly, I didn't really want to put in the effort to learn about it. And
Yeah.
for me, that's why I started using Oracle cards in the beginning was I was too lazy. I didn't want to commit to really understanding the deck and the system of information. And
Yeah.
I've never liked to do my homework. So I was just like, I don't care. I'll just use Oracle cards. But over the years, they kept showing up, and I was always, there were tarot readers that I followed, and I would get tarot readings. And a really dear friend of mine has a school in Los Angeles, 22 teachings, and it's a magic school, and she's a tarot master, and
Mm.
she offers a tarot course. I think it's an 8-week course. And she offers that a couple times a year. And so I thought, "Oh,
Wow.
you know what, I'm just going to do it." And I did it. I went through the whole course. I committed. I did my homework and I learned. And now I love it. I see why tarot is a system that has sustained for so many
So
centuries
long.
and
Yeah.
how rich it is. And like anything, you can take it at face value and do a very like, beginner 101 perspective, or you can dive in as deep as you want and find the
Right.
astrological correspondences and the numerical correspondences and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's like any system that is built upon universal truth. You see the same themes and the same ideas repeating over and over and over in other systems of information. Like you see the parallels that tarot has with other informational systems. And I just really love it. I find it to
Yeah.
be endlessly fascinating. I never stop learning. It always challenges me, and it's always spot on.
Yeah, I love my cards. I use more Oracle because I'm at, like how you said, a little intimidated by the tarot, but I do have a couple decks and I intend to learn it more, but I don't go a
Yeah.
day without drawing a card.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So another thing you offer is a mastery mentorship.
Yeah.
What does that entail and how do you help people grow
The
and
Mastery
feel through it?
Mentorship it's a 12-week program, and it's basically working together in partnership with somebody for those 12 weeks. And, I have a collection of tools and approaches and methods that have worked for me, that have worked for my clients over the years. And so Mastery Mentorship is basically it's like the acceleration program. It's where
Okay.
you can work intensely with me one-on-one. We have constant contact and communication throughout those 12 weeks. So we have a session once a week and then check in
Oh,
through
wow.
text message or telegram or email or whatever ends up being their preferred mode of communication. And it's basically just an intensive realization of who you really are. It's coming to your passion, it's coming to your purpose, it's understanding who you really are, it's creating a system. I have this tool called the emotional architecture which is a course that I teach separately, but it's also a part of that program where you basically build your own map and your own navigational system for your life and how you want to move through the world. And so
Mm,
basically, what it does is it reminds you of your power, it reminds you of your creative ability, and it brings you back to the place of doing it consciously. Here's the truth: we're always creating all of the time. And people say, oh, I'm not creative. You are creative. Maybe you're not artistic. And I think we conflate the two, but you're
yes.
always creating your reality,
Yeah.
whether or not you're aware of it. You're doing it either unconsciously or on purpose.
Yep.
And the Mastery Mentorship is about returning people to that seat of their sovereign authority so that they can
Mm,
create on purpose and have a broader understanding of you're not always driving the bus. Sometimes your job is to kick back, Jesus, take the wheel. I'm just going to hang out and go along for the ride, and you let me know when I need to get out and do something.
right, right.
So it's learning how to walk that path. It's balancing the masculine and the feminine so that the child can descend and you can begin to really integrate your higher self.
Hmm.
It's putting people in connection with their own team of guides. So it's kind of a crash course on how to be your own guru, really.
Love that. So like what modalities do you use throughout that? Because I know you do you still do like sound healing and all of that?
Yeah, I don't do the sound healing so much, although I do have a collection of sound healing files that I will,
Oh,
share with people and say, "Hey, listen to this one. This one might help."
yeah.
But my a lot of my practice is really rooted in your sentient awareness. So it's learning how to listen to the body. The body never lies, and it's remembering how the body is always communicating with us. It's
Yeah.
learning how to unravel those different threads and the voices that we all have of like, I don't know, is this me? Is this my ego? Is this my higher self? Is this my guides? And so it's teaching people how to discern the difference between
Yeah.
all of the input that we're always getting. We're so much more sensitive than we even understand. It's
Hmm.
helping people to tap into their gifts, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance, claircognizance, all of that. For me, a huge part of it is learning how to use your emotional state to create. One of
Hmm.
the fundamental principles that I live by and use in my work is the only reason you want anything, the only reason a human ever does anything is because of what we think the payoff will be. We either have a very specific energy, emotion, or experience that we think this choice will bring to us, and
Yeah.
that's the only reason that we do it. It's either because I want more of it, or I want to avoid something, or I'm not sure and I want something new.
Yes.
So when you can remember that, oh, I'm just doing this because of what I think it's going to bring me or give me, or what I'm going to
Hmm.
feel by doing it, you
Yeah.
can flip that and put the feeling first. Create your life based on energy, feeling, emotion, and experience, and let that be the guiding force. So now it's not so much about should I or shouldn't I? It's about does this feel like I want to feel?
Yeah.
Does this feel sustainable? Do I want to continue to show up and feel this in my body and feel this in my emotional field? And what happens within my system when I think about doing it? Because I
Right.
promise you, if thinking about doing it makes you sick to your stomach, actually doing it is not going to feel any better. So,
No. No. And I
so it's
always tell
a
people
lot
like
of,
with the ego's purpose is survival. So like it's if you're not conscious of what you're doing, it's going to be like, oh my God, no. You can do
yeah.
everything to tell you and your body to halt.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the ego is always trying to defend something. So
Yes.
you're right. It's always about survival mode with the ego. And
Hmm.
so it's teaching people how to acknowledge the mind, acknowledge the anxiety or the resistance, but then go to a deeper center of your awareness. The
Yes.
challenge of the mind is it can only know things historically. The mind is not
Hmm.
built to predict the future or understand what's next. It can only
Yeah.
say, well, this is what happened the last time we did it. So let's just think that that's what's going to happen this time. So the
Yeah.
limitation of the mind is it can only move you backwards. So if you're looking for a new experience, if you're looking to move beyond, you have to get out of the mind.
Mm.
And I'm not one of those leaders who says, oh, destroy the ego, destroy the mind. No, you
No.
need that. You need to know your name and
Yes.
whose shoes am I putting on in the morning and who
Yeah.
has that in the mirror looking at me? When am I going to eat? When do I have to pay my
Right.
bills?
Or don't step into the traffic or like all the
Yeah,
simple things that people don't like. Yeah.
exactly. So it's not about getting rid of it. It's about understanding that it's an assistant, not a CEO. And so
Yes.
you have to put the mind in its rightful place within your inner hierarchy. And
Yes.
building the inner temple is a huge part of that program as well, because your inner temple is where the center is, and the center is where your power is.
Mm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So we mentioned your YouTube a little bit. How did that come to be, and what role do you think that really plays in your work? I know it's huge because you have such an amazing clearly present.
Yeah.
So,
It honestly, in the beginning, I think it was 2013 when I started my YouTube channel, if I remember correctly. I was just doing it because I was in the midst of my own awakening, and I just thought somebody else out there must have some answers, or maybe they're going through it. I don't know. 10 years ago, 12 years ago, YouTube wasn't quite the thing that it is now.
oh,
It wasn't about influencers and it wasn't about branding and it wasn't about creators. It was just like a place to have a voice.
yeah.
And that's why I started, because I just thought I
Mhm.
can't be the only one going through this. Someone else either needs to hear this or I need their help. So I'm just going to start sharing. So I just started recording videos spontaneously. And it's funny, like I go back and watch some of those, and the quality is horrible. And I
Right.
often don't really feel like I knew what I was talking about. I had an idea maybe, but I was just kind of finding my way to it. And
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
I think, become a huge part of what people find in me is the authenticity of I have always shared my journey completely honestly, as open as I can be, while still obviously respecting my own privacy. But what you
right.
see is what you get. Like I've never
Yeah,
held back, even in the hardest, most difficult moments. I'm on there talking about the difficulty of it. And
yeah.
then it just started to kind of take off from there. And still to this day, it's how most people find me. It's how most people come to what I offer, and they stay or they go depending on how they resonate with it. But YouTube just really started off as like a lifeline. I just needed to feel like I was connected to something because at the
Yeah.
time, as wonderful as my friends were back then, I would say maybe only one or two of them had any idea of what I was going through or what I was talking about. And I
Yeah.
was sharing some stuff with my friend group, and they were like, I don't, what the heck are you talking about? And I've already, the normal ship sailed for me a long time ago. I was already kind of the weird one. So
Right,
for
right.
them to look at me and go, girl, I don't know what you're talking about was just like, okay, I need to find some people who are maybe a little bit more open to what's happening because nobody knew
Yes.
what I
Yeah.
was talking about. So it was
Yeah,
survival, really.
for sure. No, I always say that light workers have infiltrated media and we've used it for our own good for sure. Like I don't know if they
Yeah,
expected that to happen,
yeah,
but
for sure.
do you have like a favorite topic or series that you talk about on your YouTube?
I mean, if you see, there's so many things I've experimented with. I have
Yeah.
old podcasts on there. I had a series with a friend of mine who's a medical doctor called The Doctor and the Healer, and we
Ooh.
offered like the medical perspective and then the spiritual
Oh, I
perspective
love
on a
that.
lot of the things that humans contend with.
Okay.
I have a whole playlist of guided meditations and sound healings, but for a long time, the bulk of what I offered were these energy forecasts. And I would do the
Mhm.
beginning of the month and kind of the middle of the month, and then maybe check in. And then I also did oracle readings and tarot readings pretty consistently for a while as well. And now there's been this huge shift in my work over just the past couple of months into the Ascension and the New Earth timeline conversation.
Yeah.
Frankly, I avoided for a long time. If you watch
Mhm.
my old stuff, I would talk around it, like I
Yeah.
would allude to it, and it's sort of the mystery school approach. Like if you have eyes to hear or eyes to see and ears to hear, you'll get it.
Yeah,
But for a
yeah.
lot of people, they're just taking it at face value. And there's I think a subset of the population that they just want 1111, what I call 1111 content, right? Like, where's my
Yes.
boyfriend? Where's my money? And what does 1111 mean?
Yes.
Look, I get it. We all start there, but there's so much
Oh
more
my
to the
gosh.
understanding of who you are as an energetic being beyond that.
Hmm.
But again, interestingly, I was always trying to play to the consensus crowd. I was always looking for like, what do people really want to know about? And in the beginning, I think the popularity of my channel was driven by my own excitement and my own discovery because I was literally in real time channeling or discovering something, and then I would immediately put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then for the past couple of years, I'd been getting the nudge to really lean into the Ascension New Earth stuff, but I resisted because I was like, no, that's not what people know me for. And I don't want to go way
Hmm.
out on the fringe. And those are some really big claims to make.
Yeah.
Finally, I said, okay. So last month, I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. I'm going to not guise it or, veil it in any sort of symbolism. I'm going to speak very clearly to the topic. And that video, the Your New Earth Timeline, is now the most viewed video on my channel. It went
Wow.
like it's at 25,000 views and counting now, which for me is a huge number.
Good.
Um, and that to me, I just laughed when I saw that because in 2016, I was getting maybe 16 to 20,000 views a video.
Hmm.
Then very quickly things fell apart, and I was maybe getting 200 views a video if I was lucky.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember those days when I was talking about that in my videos of like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
what the heck's
that's when we
happening.
reconnected. Actually, it was right before my life changed too, almost 6 months ago, and you were just coming live every day for 30 days, and I was showing up with you and just sharing your frustration, and but then it was healing throughout
Yeah.
it was a wonderful exchange.
Yeah, so that was another example of just showing up honestly and saying, I don't really
It
have
was
anything to
so
offer
inspiring,
other
so
than my own
inspiring.
confusion.
Yeah.
So, and that was the What the WTF series, which I
Yes,
think
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
still
that's what
that
it was.
playlist there.
Yeah.
So finally I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I remember posting that video, the New Earth Timeline video, and thinking this is going to be like every other video I've posted. I'm maybe going to get 500 views if I'm lucky, but I had come to the point where I was like, you know what? It's not about that.
Yeah.
And I had said to Spirit before, I said, I don't care how this performs from that analytics perspective. I just hope that people get something out of it. And if 5 people show up or 5 million people show up, that will be done. I'm just glad somebody out there is getting what they need. And I woke up the next day and it had like 14,000 views. And I was like, what? And I would literally like log onto my YouTube channel and that little analytics page, you can watch the numbers climbing in real time. And I was just
Yeah.
watching it grow and grow. And so I'm just leaning into that because that's what spirit needs and from me. And
Yeah.
what I know about what I do, and astrologically, you can see it in my chart. I have a whole lot of air and a whole lot of earth. I have no water, none, and a little
Really.
bit of fire in my chart. And I have a gift of taking really big, woo woo, high level, abstract, out there concepts and making them real and accessible and practical. It's like practical ascension. I break it down, dispel the myths, and make it something that anybody can approach, whether you're a soccer mom, a coffee shop worker, a mechanic, or a guru.
Yeah.
I can make it accessible to everybody. And I think that's what people need right now because
Yeah.
we are in this chapter where things are getting ready to shift into overdrive. Pluto and Aquarius, it's going to happen like this. And we're all going to be dumbfounded by what happens over the next 18 months, I feel. And I think that right now is the time where people need a practical approach
Hmm.
to understanding what the hell is going on in my life, in the life of the world, on the planet, across the ocean. Like, what is this?
Seriously.
And so that's what I'm here to offer.
I love that. I love that so much, especially now with I don't know if you've seen any of the news, but the ocean aliens, we're dealing with that
Mm.
now. There's like footage and witnesses talking, even like a police chief in New Jersey talking about they saw 50 drones coming out of the ocean. But I'm like, here we go. Buckle up.
Buckle up, baby.
Buckle up. Oh my God.
Yeah, because an Aquarius is an air sign. So its air energy moves really, really quickly. And Aquarian energy is always very futuristic. And Pluto in Aquarius is basically the future coming home to say, okay, are you ready for me? Because I'm here.
Yeah,
Whether or not you're ready, I'm going to be in your face, undeniable, unavoidable, and y'all are going to have to deal with it some way or another. So,
real.
technologically, I think we're going to see things really shift into overdrive. We're going to see continued collapse because Aquarius is also about the service to the collective. It's the unified self in service of something greater. And
Mm,
so I think many of us are going to be feeling this continued intensifying pressure to what am I here to do and who am I in service to? Who am I here to help?
yeah,
And that's what humans were built for.
yeah,
We are here to live as an example of what it means to be in service to something greater than ourselves, either our community, our family, our loved ones, or a nation. It
yes.
doesn't matter. Just find something that needs you and
Mm,
pour yourself into it. And Aquarius, that is going to turn that dial up to 100. And what we're going to see first is all the things that stand in the way of that.
yep, yeah. I said recently in one of my sessions or channelings, if you want to call it, because I was under hypnosis, that 2025 is going to be unrecognizable,
Yeah.
like just unrecognizable. What that means to each is going to be what it means, but I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. That's what I say.
Me too. And it's interesting because in the tarot readings that I'm doing for the 2025 forecasts, a lot of fire and a lot of air is showing up all over the place. And it is about acceleration. 2025 is a bridge. 2026, I think we're going to start to see, wow, how amazing it is.
Yeah.
2025 is going to be like, what the WTF is happening.
Yeah.
But for those who are ready and have been preparing themselves, we are laying the groundwork, we are clearing the space, we are tilling the soil and planting the seeds. You know,
Mm.
Pluto and Capricorn that we just moved out of was the taskmaster. It was the workhorse saying, roll up your sleeves, clean the floors, wash the dishes, get your house in order because the future's coming.
Yeah.
And now she's here. And
Yeah.
she's saying, okay, let's go. And we're all saying, but wait, I did that. She was like, no, 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 no. You talked about it. You
Right.
visioned
That was
about
just
it.
the
You
prep.
dreamed
Yeah.
about it. But now you're actually doing it. So do it. Get
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah.
So it's the physical manifestation of everything that has been happening internally. And even the things we've been trying to suppress internally are going to
Yep.
reveal themselves
Yep.
collectively, societally, and individually. So I'm really excited. I can't wait. I think it's going to be amazing. And I also know why a lot of people are afraid.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Shit in their pants for
Yeah,
sure. I get it. I get it. You need
I
your bell for
understand.
that one, Bridget.
Exactly.
So, like, how would you describe these concepts of New Earth and Ascension to someone who's like just beginning?
I think Pam Gregory is one of my favorite astrologers. You can find her on YouTube. And she says, the way that she talks about it is it's all about orientation. Like you're either seeing it through the lens of fear or you're seeing it through the lens of love.
Mm.
It's that roller coaster analogy again. We can
Yep.
be sitting next to each other side by side, the same place, the same time, the same moment. You might be terrified and I might be overjoyed.
Yeah.
So it's just how are you seeing the world? What do you believe about yourself and your place in the world? I think that's a good sort of overview to start to perceive it. Ascension is about the return to self.
Mm.
Ascension, the definition of it is to rise in level, is to rise up above or through a system.
Yep.
And so, from a very practical perspective, we can look at the bandwidths of frequency, which you could call a dimension or a layer of reality, if we're talking about third dimension, fourth dimension, or fifth dimension,
Hmm.
because 5D or the fifth dimension is something that you will hear a lot about as you begin to move into this topic of
Yep.
ascension and a new earth. Ascension and the spiritual masters, that are all many of who have become religious icons have shown us this process of ascension in their mythology. It's
Yep.
the raising of the self to understand that you are not this body. You are the spirit within. This planet is not your home. It's where you came to exist for a time to learn and grow. So
Mhm.
ascension is a return to the truth. It's like apocalypse is just the revelation of the truth. So ascension is basically coming home to yourself. It's making you the decider of your life in concert with the divinity of your understanding, whether you call it God, spirit, the universe, angels, life force, chi, prana, whatever.
Yeah.
You begin to see that, oh, I am actually the avatar of the divine. Like I am that divine spark in action and in form. So what am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
So ascension is basically, I think of the hot air balloon. Your beliefs are your baggage. They're the sandbags that hold you down. And as you release these false beliefs, these false layers, these coping mechanisms that all humans have,
Yeah.
Earth is a really, really hard place to live for an infinite eternal being. It's
Yeah.
really hard. That's why we come for the challenge of the Earth School. So as you cut away the weight of those outdated and false beliefs, you raise naturally. You rise just as
Mm.
a result of that.
Yes.
So ascension isn't about trying to reach someplace so much as it about liberating yourself from the things that hold you down. And then you raise just as a result of that.
Mm.
The new earth is the physical manifestation of that belief because the planet also is a sentient being and she is going through her own ascension process. I
Yep.
think no matter what your belief system is, we can all agree that we haven't treated the earth as kindly or as appropriately as perhaps we should have. And now we're starting to see the result of that in many ways. But
Yeah.
she also has her own consciousness. She also has her own life path and her own plan for herself as a being and what she's going to do in her journey. So she is also raising in her vibration, basically saying the shenanigans are going to stop.
Yep.
I let y'all do whatever you wanted for the past several thousand years, but now I am creating new boundaries and I'm saying no. Because the
Mm.
truth is, we need the planet, but she doesn't really need us.
I mean,
I mean, she could shake us all off tomorrow and be just fine.
yeah.
But her gift and her sacrifice is, yeah, I'm going to let these 8 billion fools live on my back, and I'm going to let them do basically whatever they want. And then I'm going to, at some point, say, no, mother's had enough.
Yes.
I think that's a lot of what lockdown was, among other things. But the
Oh, yeah.
lesson that humanity took was spirit saying, y'all need to go to your corners because you're not listening. You're not hearing me when I say things are changing. It's not if, it's when.
Yes.
And so the new earth is, again, a reclamation of the sovereignty. I don't need a system telling me what to eat, how to grow my food. I don't need a system lying to me and telling me that things are good for me or going to help me that are deliberately intended not to.
Yeah.
So it's the dissolution of all of that. It's a clearing away of the illusion. And that's not easy
No.
because for most of us, that requires a dismantling of your entire worldview.
Everything. Yeah. Yeah.
You have to accept, oh, I've been lied to. And not only was I lied to, I showed up asking for more.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
It can be.
Really
Yeah.
hard. So it's a return. It's ultimately it's liberation. Like I know as a soul, I just love humans so much. I came back one more time just to help them remember who they are. My goal has always been to get my clients to the point where they don't need me anymore.
Mm.
I came in with a few extra switches flipped on because that's what I agreed to do in this life, but I'm not special. I can't do anything that nobody else can do in their own way. We all have that built-in sense of the GPS system, our inner guidance. We all have a higher self. We all
Yeah.
have a soul self. We all have a connection to the divine. And all of us are playing the role that we agreed to play. There are no victims on this planet. And those who we perceive as victimized, they are actually some of the most brilliant beings because they came to play that part and say, yes, I will be the one who is brutalized and traumatized, if only with the hope that it can help another human wake up and
Mm.
say, we don't need to do that anymore.
Yes. Yeah. That's a hard concept for many, for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, like I chose this abuse, I chose this violence. Is like, let's
Yeah,
talk.
and
Let's talk.
yeah, sort of. And I think, part of what I try to help people differentiate in my work is it wasn't the specifics of your experience that you wanted. You didn't go, woohoo, I can't wait to have cancer. What you wanted was the experience, what the experience of that challenge or that trauma, what it will bring you.
Yeah.
It's the value of what that experience opens up for you internally and what it can often be as an example to the rest of the world because those really magnificent souls who have played the part of one who is really traumatized or in a lot of pain or goes through a lot of difficulty on a global scale, they awaken millions.
Yeah.
They help people tap back into that well of compassion that we all have access to, but that so many of us try so hard to deny and to numb out because it's too painful.
Hmm.
But if one person suffering can awaken even just one other human, then it's worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What
Yeah.
would you say is like the most exciting possibility of the New Earth timeline?
The reclamation of sovereignty. I think
Hmm.
the realization that we don't need these big systems to be in charge of us.
Yeah.
Why do you think there's so many places that are making, backyard gardens illegal?
Yes, I heard about
If
that.
I grow my own food, I don't need a big monolithic system. And I think that's part of what lockdown showed us and with the supply chain failures was, wait a minute. If
Yeah.
I can grow vegetables and fruit and flowers, and my neighbor down the street has the dairy cow, and my neighbor down the block has the chickens and the eggs, and my neighbor across the street can mill the flour for me or whatever, and then my friend is an herbalist, I have my food, I have my flowers, I have my medicine, I have my proteins, whatever it is I need.
Yeah.
Why do I need a big system? Why do I need to wait in line for crappy insurance?
Right.
Why do I need to ask permission to heal my own body?
Seriously. Yeah.
And so I think that that's what's so exciting is the realization that there's more of us than there is of them. And the powers that were, who are rapidly collapsing and disintegrating and imploding,
Yep.
they also chose the role of the bad guy. So
Yeah.
I have compassion for what you chose, but your role is over. Your chapter is done. So it's time for you to exit. This is the scene in the script when the bad guy gets taken away and
Mm,
humanity rejoices and gets back to taking care of themselves and each other.
yes.
Because what I know is all humans want the same thing.
Yeah.
We all need the same thing. We all need food, water, shelter, clothing, love, community, safety. And we all want to live freely according to our own belief systems. We all want permission to express ourselves openly. We all want to be seen and honored and respected. And when we can live in that way, then that's the reality that we get.
Mm, mm.
So that's what's exciting to me.
Would you say New Earth is already here?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Because it's ultimately a choice. I think what I see as one of the big myths around this idea of ascension or the new earth, that it's going to happen to us.
Yes.
Some ship is going to appear in the sky and magically bestow all of the good people with this new earth reality, and all the bad people will be taken to a prison planet.
Right.
Not really. We
No.
do have assistance from our galactic family, but the truth is that humans are also galactic beings. We live in a galaxy, so this human-centric perspective is something that is being dismantled quite rapidly. To
Yep.
realize that we are one of a myriad of beings in a hierarchy that is on a galactic level. So nothing's going to happen to us. They're not coming to save us. That
Yes.
would defeat the whole point. The whole point of coming to Earth is to come to your remembrance, to
Hmm.
liberate yourself, to
Yeah.
step into your sovereignty and say, I choose this. I'm not going to do this old thing anymore. I'm choosing freedom and liberty for myself
Mm,
first, because if I want to heal the world, all I have to do is heal myself and then share with everybody how I did it. So that's the whole point of those of us who are the forerunners, who are the way showers and the path and the leaders. It's always more challenging because we're the first one in line. We're the one with the machete cutting the path through the jungle, going, I don't know if this is the right way. I think
right.
this is the right way. It feels like the right way. And
Yeah.
that's why there's so many of us, because we're all talking about the same thing. But
Yes.
the flavor that you bring is not the flavor that I bring, not the flavor that someone else brings. So what we're offering is our own experience and our own authenticity for the group of individuals who need help, to go, oh, I like him. I like the way that he does it. I like his flavor and I can relate to him. He's a single dad. He's, someone that I feel like would be a friend or someone that I would recognize in a social group, or I think he's funny, or I think he's smart, or I like his vibe, whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
That's how the new earth begins. We build it because we decide it's time.
Mm,
And when we make that choice to come home, spirit will never say no. Here's the thing. Spirit isn't asking us to play small. She's
no.
not asking us to suffer. Again, in a reality where we get the experience of free will, she says, I will love you no matter what. You can have whatever you want,
Hmm.
even if it's suffering and misery and limitation. I will give it to you because that's what unconditional love. It's unconditional. There are no requirements. You will get what you believe
Yep.
and you will get what you create. So when you decide, I don't want to do it like that anymore, I'm not participating in those systems anymore, then she opens the door for the new way. But, you have to be willing to choose it. When you choose the way opens. It's like that scene in I think it's Temple of Doom. No, it's the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark. But when Indiana Jones is like going into the Holy Grail thing, and
Yeah.
there's a bridge that he can't see, like he can't see it, and so he throws the gravel onto the thing, and he can see like, oh,
Right.
it's just sort of camouflaged. It's kind of the same thing. You just have to be willing to step onto the path, even if you can't see it.
Yes.
And that's when spirit will always rise to meet you. But seeing is not believing. Believing is
No.
seeing.
100%. That's one of my favorite too. I add that to my book.
Awesome.
My short little sayings. That's literally one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're also known for bridging the gap between where people are and where they want to be. How do you guide others through that process?
That's, I think that's another way to look at ascension is a return to your natural state of being.
Yeah.
Ascension really, in many ways, is descension, because as you do your work
Mhm.
and rise in frequency, now your higher aspect, which resides in just a higher layer of awareness, it's still you, but it's like the iceberg thing, right? It's most of the iceberg is hidden beneath the surface. So just
Right.
turn that upside down. Most of what we are is not visible necessarily to the physical eyes.
Yes.
So when you're ascending, you're basically calling that part of you home and saying, I'm going to meet you in the middle, and then we can really begin to merge. So building a bridge from where you are to where you're going to be, or who you are to who you want to be, first begins with accepting things as they are.
Mm,
Healing cannot happen until you just say, yep, this is my reality right here, right now. I had
yeah.
a house cleaning business for a long time, and that's always the first step. I'm a super Virgo. I love cleaning up other people's messes. So walking into a room or a house that's dirty, that's the first step is just going, okay, we need to sweep the floors, we need to clear
Yes.
out the garbage, we need to clean the windows and, scrub the toilet.
Hmm.
So it's not about being judged for the mess. It's not about you're not a bad person because your life is a wreck or you're unhappy. That's just where you are.
Yeah.
So by accepting, yeah, this is where I am, that is always the beginning. You have to surrender to the belief that there is another way, that there is another path forward in order to start seeing that path.
Hmm.
And so building the bridge is basically you accept where you are, you kind of figure out where you want to be or where you're going to go. Again, from the energy, feeling, emotion, or experience perspective, I want to feel free. I want to be creative. I want to be self-sustaining. I want to be in community, and I want to be joyful.
Yeah.
That is a life plan.
Yep.
So you begin to reorient and redirect and recreate your life around your feeling, emotion, and energy and experience, as opposed to, I want the car, the house, and the husband. Well, you just want those things because of what they represent.
Yes.
It represents a state of being that you want to achieve.
Hmm.
So when you're willing to say, I don't care how it happens, as long as I'm happy, self-employed, and helping people, I don't care what I do. So building the bridge it's kind of a multi-phase thing, but it begins by accepting where you are, then getting clear on where you want to go, and then the work is the bridge. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
proceed forward. Oh, now there's a mental block. Okay, let's deal with that. Oh, now there's some stored trauma in my body. Okay, let's work with cellular memory and muscle memory and neural pathways. Oh, I don't know where to go. I'm feeling lost. Okay, let's put you back in the center and remember who you are. So it's kind of retraining the self. I mean,
Yeah.
in many ways, you're just potty training the puppy, and how many times you have to put it back on the pee pad before it finally just goes, oh, I go outside. And there is that day where you're like, oh my God, hallelujah. Or I'm sure for you, it's like
Right.
potty training your child. Like
For
you just
sure.
think you're never gonna get it. Oh my God. But it's the same thing. Like you will have those moments of like, I am never gonna get this.
Hmm.
I'm never gonna figure it out. I'm always gonna be broke or frustrated or alone. No, you won't be, but it's about reprogramming and persuading those old parts of you that, baby, I know why we do it like this. I
Yeah.
was there when the trauma happened. I remember it like it was yesterday because I was with you, but that's not who we are anymore.
Mm.
And you do the work of showing up for yourself as long as it takes to heal that part so then you can integrate it, and that's when you can begin to move forward, because healing moves you backwards. I think that's another one of the notes from the higher self. Healing
Hmm.
is for the human and it moves you backwards. I want
Mm.
to go back to the state when I wasn't broken, so I go back and I rescue those parts of myself and we bring them forward and integrate them. Then the journey of transformation begins, and transformation moves you forward. Transformation is saying, yeah, I was that person, but not anymore. It's
Yes.
not living it at the denial of that. It's just knowing that that's not the one who's in the driver's seat anymore.
Yeah.
And that's when we really begin to cross the bridge, is in the transformation phase. Now you're becoming who you've always been, and you no longer stand in your way because you know that it's true.
Yeah. Something I usually say is like sometimes you have to separate, which isn't always good, but like the difference between like your life and your life circumstance, because they're
Yeah.
two completely different things. And circumstances are always gonna change and change, but your life, yourself, your true self will always remain. So it's sometimes you
Yeah.
have to like not get caught up in the circumstance. So it's yeah, another
Yeah.
analogy.
It is. And I love the Pima Chodron quote. She says, you are the sky and everything else is just the weather.
Mm,
Like you are just that field of awareness that it all passes through, but you are not your pain. You are not your trauma.
I love
Yes, you
that.
are influenced by it. Yes, you are formed by it, but you are not it.
Mm,
And when you can expand yourself big enough in your understanding to consume that essentially, to let the traumatized self exist. Yeah, honey, I know you're there, but you're not that anymore. So you can just chill out, go
Yeah.
read a book, go take a
Yeah.
nap because you're not the one who's in charge anymore. I am not that identity anymore. I'm the
Mhm.
sky.
Something I did with my son when he was younger, and I was doing my best to like talk about emotions and feelings and energy. I would just ask him, how's your sky today?" Which would be his mind, his brain, his thoughts. I'm like, is it cloudy? Is it sunny? And that's how we get to like this little kid to talk about things that were really deep. And it's yeah, that's a really cool thing that just made me
I
think of when you
love
brought up
that.
the sky. Yeah,
It's really beautiful.
I love that. Why is it so important to you to have balance and spiritual insight with your practical tools in your work?
Because we came to have a human experience. That's why we're in a human body. And a
Right.
physical reality requires a physical choice and a physical action.
Hmm.
And we didn't come here to eradicate the ego. We didn't come here to eradicate the human self. We came here to redefine what it is to be human. I mean, it's that concept of Homo luminous, right? It's human 2.0. Like we are literally becoming a new version, which is really just the original template. We're
Right.
returning to that divine template. So I don't want to escape my humanness. My God, there's so many things that I can only do with a human body.
Yeah.
Really good food, a really comfortable bed, a salt bath, amazing sex, like really nice clothes and super cozy, comfy sheets. Like none of those things can happen outside of a human experience. I
No.
don't want to eradicate or end the human experience. I want to redefine it.
Yeah.
I want it to be one where everybody has access to the fundamental basic things that every human needs. I want to create spaces where anybody who's ready can come and participate. And so I think it's important. And again, what I do is practical application of these really high level concepts.
Yeah.
Jesus was just a dude. He was just a dude, and he said that all the time. I am not better than you. I'm just a guy who was here to show you what is possible. These things
Yeah.
I do, and you will do, that and much greater. So it's just, we've been shown it a million times, and we are part of that system. This body came from the flowers and the trees and the planets and the sun and the moon. Like this, none of these molecules are new.
Yeah.
It's all on loan.
Yep.
And when this body collapses and goes back to the earth, then I'll move on to the next journey. But while I'm here, I want to have as much fun as I can. I
Yeah.
want it to be as joyful and free and on purpose and infused with that endless compassion and infinite love that spirit is. I want all of that. So, and I can have it.
Yeah.
But I can't have it if I'm denying my human experience. And I can't have it if I'm trying, oh, I'm a unicorn. Oh, I'm a fairy. Well, maybe on some level, but you're really a human. That's
Yes.
why you're here in a human form, to have
Hmm.
a human experience and to show what is possible, to live as an example of what it means to be liberated and self-governing and sovereign, and to live as an interdependent part of this whole amazing cycle that we come from and that we'll return to,
Yeah.
and that none of us are outside of or exempt from. So if it's not practical, if there's no way to apply it in real world, then it's just a saying on the wall.
True. Yeah. I resonate with that for sure. Because it's always tricky for me. I think it's, what's the term? Spiritual dissonance. Like, I think a lot of people go through that during their awakening where you're just like, oh my God, none of this is real. Nothing matters. So
Yeah,
you put all of
exactly.
that back, back.
And that's the other side of it is, all of it matters and none of it matters.
Correct.
You are the most important person on the planet and yet no more important than anybody else. You
Yes.
are everything and you are nothing. You are the entirety of creation and you are just one single being.
Yeah.
So that's the dichotomy and the conflict that we inherently experience as a human is
Mhm.
we get the experience of living separately. We get the experience of our own will, but we're not separate and we really don't have our own will.
Exactly.
And that's the irony as you ascend in your understanding of who and what you really are, you find less and less reason or desire to reject yourself or deny yourself. I don't believe in the concept of sin. I believe the only sin is denial of self. Because
I
to
love
deny
that.
the self is to deny the divine.
I love that.
Nothing's right or wrong. It's
Hmm.
all just an experience that you're choosing and creating so that you can remember and learn about who and what you really are.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you personally stay grounded and aligned while guiding others through such like transformative experiences? I know it's a challenge for me sometimes.
Yeah. I think it's by leaning into my real life with just as much passion as I do my spiritual life.
Mm,
Practically, it's eating well, it's doing the things that I love to do, it's taking naps, it's drinking enough water, physically keeping myself fit. And sometimes that's going to the gym, sometimes that's just walking for a few miles. I also do a lot of fascia work, like working with the fascia and having a system where I'm actually learning how to manipulate it and release it has been incredibly beneficial for my inner health, my energetic health, and emotional health.
yeah, I love fascia
Um,
work.
it's so powerful.
Love it.
My God, it's crazy how what an impact fascia work can have in a human
Yes.
experience.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all those things, making sure I'm taking time to meditate, making sure I'm taking time to be still and be silent, finding my favorite shows to watch on Netflix or whatever,
Mhm.
finding a way to separate myself from the noise that's out there all of the time, 24/7.
Yeah.
Having healthy boundaries around like, okay, how many likes and subscribes do I have now? Like, okay, sure, that's important, but it also isn't important.
Yeah.
So don't make yourself crazy. So it's kind of, I just do the things that I know serve me in return in some way. I give myself a huge, huge ration of compassion and understanding, especially where I am now living with my dad and taking care of him. It is not easy. And there are so many
Yeah.
moments where I am in my smallest, most angry, most resentful self. And as hard as that is to see and experience sometimes, I also just have to find a way to love myself,
Yeah.
and just say, it's okay, honey. It's not easy. What you're doing is not easy and you're allowed to have a bad day.
Do you still talk to Candace at all? Candace Crawl Goldman?
I haven't spoken to her in several months. I think the last time I spoke with her was at the beginning of this year. But no, it's been a while since I've spoken to her.
Because she's, as I'm sure you know, she takes care of her father as well. So I'm sure
Yeah.
it would be great for you guys to talk about that, I would imagine,
Yeah, I
because
should
it's
reach out
hard.
actually.
It's really
And
hard.
it
Um,
is.
let's see. Are there any future goals or projects that you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a program that I'm going to be launching in the beginning of next year at some point. The working title of it now is Ascension School. So it's going to be like probably a 12-week program of just taking people through like a spiritual boot camp. And we're going to go from the beginning all the way to the end, where it's really just arming people with the insight, the tools, and the inner connections so that they can really begin to navigate their world on purpose and deliberately and
Hmm,
really reclaim that space of sovereignty. I know there'll be more books on the horizon at some point, though I
great.
don't know what they'll be at this point.
Okay.
And then really, I mean, my next big goal is just to get my own space again. I've been living with family off and on for the past, 5.5 years.
Hmm.
And as grateful as I have been for their support and
Yeah.
how I have really not only healed my own experience, but also been present to support them in healing their own life.
Yeah.
I'm ready to be in my own space again. I'm ready to have that freedom and autonomy again. So,
Yeah.
finding a place to live. I have eyes on Santa Fe. So if anyone in Santa
Ooh.
Fe has a house they want to loan me, I'm open and available to talk. I'm gonna have to get a car. Like there's a whole bunch of practical
Yeah.
stuff I'll have to do, but
Right.
um, I'm just really excited because ultimately my goal is to have, and I've been talking about this for a couple of years, but to have a physical location where what we do is an example of everything I've talked about, growing our own food and really
Yes.
creating our own ecosystem and building a
Yeah.
community and offering spaces for people to come for retreats and for workshops or for, sessions. Also having, I want to have like a food pantry or a food bank and really give
Yes.
back to people who need support. It's really a shame that to eat really healthy, well-intentioned food and well-grown food costs more than some chemical garbage. And
Oh,
I don't think it should have to be like that. I don't think it should be expensive to eat on a planet that is so plentiful and abundant. So I
I
want to be a
agree.
part of breaking those systems.
I've heard and have had my own visions and premonitions of a future like that where it's more unity in the community and just living off the land and just like a commune, which sounds a little culty, but you know what
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, and just having, I think that the new earth in large part is built by those who are willing to show an example of what it can look like.
Correct.
and to say, yes, we are interdependent with one another. And sure, for a while, we are going to need these big systems. We're not just going to flip the switch and government's going to go away. We're not
Right.
going to flip a switch and suddenly corporate America isn't going to be a part of it. But it's like what you said, when we infiltrate these systems and we redefine them from the inside out by coming up with our own models that are sustainable and profitable and practical and realistic within the context of the human experience,
Yes.
that's how we do it. If
Yes.
I can show a big corporation, like actually, I can do it for half the cost and twice the productivity and three times the efficiency, and my
Yeah.
product is more sustainable and healthy and better for everybody, all living things. So your model is obsolete.
Yep.
That is how we make a difference.
100%.
At least that's how I feel I do.
No, I agree. I totally agree. For someone who's feeling stuck or unsure about their spiritual journey, what one piece of advice would you offer to them?
Get really, really clear on where you are.
Mm.
Just it's the one of the hardest things to do is to just accept where you are.
Yeah.
And it's not about blame, it's not about feeling guilty or ashamed or bad. We all go through that initial awakening period and then continue to butt up against our own limiting beliefs. It's an endless process, but just begin by saying, okay, this is where I am.
Yeah.
Maybe for someone who, is in financial hardship, just write down in black and white in front of you how much debt do you really have? What are the practical needs for your life? How much money do you need? How much debt do you have? These simple things. It's like when you walk into the room, the first step to cleaning it up is just acknowledging the mess that it's in. You're not a
Yeah.
bad person. So
Yeah.
begin just by being really, really honest with yourself about who you are and where you are, because spirit can't help you sustain a lie.
Mm.
Spirit can't help you perpetuate untruth.
Yep.
Your guides can't help you move away from yourself.
Yeah.
They can throw warnings and, like, hey, we're over here, you're moving in the wrong direction. But spirit, again, in a free will reality, spirit can't force you to accept yourself and to tell the truth about your life. They can
Mm.
only make it increasingly uncomfortable
Yeah.
lie about it. And hopefully at some point you go, okay, enough. I've had it. Fine. This is where
Right.
I am. What do I do now? Because that is the beginning of everything. Because the minute that you accept where you are, it's when you instantly pivot back to who you truly are. And it begins to call you forward and say, okay, baby, I'm over here.
Yes. Yes. Very good answer. I like that one. I could talk to you forever. Like
I
this
know,
is
same.
this is so great. Please come back. Please, please.
I would love to. Thank you for
Something I
having
like
me.
to ask, just to give it a little fun note at the end of one of these episodes, is if you had a superpower, what would it be, and how would you use it to help humanity?
Ooh, that's such a good one. If I had a superpower, I think the power of invisibility would be a good one. But I would also want to be able to, like, walk through walls. So I
Okay.
could sit in on some of these clandestine meetings and conversations and then go and tell the truth about what's really being said. So I
Okay.
could see what's really happening behind the
Mm,
man behind the curtain and
correct.
really listen in on that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then walking through walls so I could just go grab a whole bunch of money and give it to a bunch of
Oh
people
my
that need it like
gosh.
that. But I think invisibility would be a good one.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
great. That's a
Yeah.
first answer for that one too.
Oh, good. Awesome. Well, at least I'm original.
Yeah, most it's been like flying, which is like a go-to for everyone. And
Yeah.
then, but the trick is for humanity. So I've had some people say I can rescue cats in the trees, deliver medicine to people in the
Yeah.
mountains. And just like, ooh, I like how
That's a good one.
just kind of healers flying and walking through walls everywhere.
Hey, I wouldn't say no to flying. I think that would
No,
be good too.
no.
Yeah.
Okay, so where can listeners learn more about you, get your book, work with you, all
Yeah,
that
you
stuff?
can my website is amar.energy, so www.amar.energy. You can find me on YouTube at Amar Energy. My Instagram is Amar Energy, and then Notes from the Higher Self is my book, available on Amazon. Which I hope to someday move it off of Amazon because I have my own opinions about Amazon, but it was the path of least
Yeah,
resistance to getting it out there. So if
yeah.
there's a publisher out there that's interested in, buying it and we could just move it to their publishing house, I'm open to that too. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best way to find me. And then on my website, actually on all my social medias, you'll find links to my booking calendar. The tarot forecasts, I usually do those through like the first week or two of January. So there's
Yep.
about a month, another month left of those.
Yep.
I'm not sure when this is going to be published, but yeah, they can just find me under Amar Energy.
Perfect. And of course, I'll put all the links in the description to make it easier for
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you.
So, is there any messages or thoughts that you want to leave with our audience?
Don't believe the hype.
Mm,
When you're listening to something, this is another one from the book. Like if they're using fear to sell you freedom, it's not freedom that they're selling. So if someone is telling you to be afraid of something and to run or duck and cover or to harm somebody else or eradicate somebody else in the name of this fear, be really suspicious of that.
yeah.
Don't believe the hype. The machine is designed to keep you afraid.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying don't pay attention. Listen and then filter it through your own internal system. Does this feel true?
Yep.
Does this feel like accurate information? What happens in my body when I'm feeling this or when
Hmm.
I'm hearing this or reading this? So
Yeah.
don't believe the hype. Listen to something deeper, tune into something higher, because I promise there's another layer of truth there.
Mm, well said. It's like
Yeah.
that other, again, I'm known for my cliche sayings, but like the observe, don't absorb. Like it's just
Yes.
as simple as that. Just
Yeah.
witness, just
Yeah.
witness.
You
Yeah.
can be in the eye of the storm is where the calm is. So
Yes.
when you're in the center, you can watch the hurricane that's spinning around. You go, oh, well, yep, there's that thing. Oh, there it is again. But it doesn't mean you have to participate. It doesn't
No.
mean you have to get sucked into the drama. You can be in
Yes.
it and be centered and grounded so that it spins around you and you witness it without being a participant.
Yep. And the moment that you cling on to it, you get swept up into all the
Yep.
bullshit. So that's another
Yep.
one of my favorite analogies. I'm glad you
It's
said
so
that.
true. It's so true. And some of us like to learn the hard way. It took me years of putting my hand on that hot burner to realize, like, oh, whenever I do that, I get
Seriously.
burned. So I
Seriously.
get it, and as many times as it takes is as long as it takes. But
Yep.
spirit's not impatient. Time is an illusion. Where are you going?
Yep.
You're infinite.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Amar,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank
I had
you. I
such a great
appreciate
time.
you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Kenny. Kenneth, sorry. I appreciate it. And I
Right. You
can't
can
wait
call
to
me
come
anything you want.
back.
I'll respond. And if you've made it this
Awesome.
far, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and we will talk in the next one. Speak soon.
Bye.